This is Brian Gordon with Chapter 3 of the Spellgrazer Saga. Chapter 3, Wizard's Folly. Gathered into one of the rooms, the small group looked at the very basic map the warrior, Dunmal, had drawn from the donkey's description of the castle. A circle marked the fractured gates, and a red line followed a path through a small field, past a pair of buildings, and through an interior wall that surrounded the remains of the castle. Inside, the castle had a fairly simple layout, with several long strings of rooms that surrounded a large central chamber, which supported a dining room as well, studies, and quarters throughout the second and third floors. Attached to the rear of the castle was a large tower that held the various offices of the king's appointees, one of which had been the wizards. Beneath the entire structure, storage rooms and a large dungeon had been built out of the remains of an older building. There were courtyards surrounding the castle, contained by the interior wall, which they would need to investigate before entering the castle itself. Upon completion of their planning and preparation phase, they all parted for a final night before they began their journey. Dunmal considered the group he had gathered to face the demons within the castle. Each of them had their own reasons for joining him. Barlo, the disciple, was an acolyte of Heron Soul, training to become an emissary for their temple. He was in the process of generating field reports for his elders, as he was far more capable of traveling than they, and further ahead in his training than most of the acolytes his age. Ransa had only seemed interested in finding demon hide to rest his blades in. He seemed to have a bit more experience than the others, experience which certainly wouldn't hurt their chances. Shandra was a curious case, intrigued by the tale of the wizard and the arcane forces at work on the former king. As a student of the mystic schools, that seemed fitting, but Dunmal was not entirely sure why someone would want to trifle with such things. He had attempted to learn a basic conjuration spell once while under the tutelage of his old master, but all he had been able to produce was a large chunk of metallic rock, and became disheartened with learning magic. Upon seeing this, his master began training him in the ways of the sword. Dunmal's stature allowed him to wield a much larger weapon than most, and shortly after his brief foray into the mystic arts, his master presented him with the very blade that he carried with him still. The training he received from then on focused on his connection with the weapon, his ability to control it with more than just his hands. It had never occurred to him that his master had flavored his training with a mystic touch, or that his master had forged the blade from the metal he had summoned. After a night's rest, they traveled down the road Dunmal had come in on. Rain fell no more, and a golden sun caught the morning mists as it filtered through the trees and buildings. They climbed the hills and dipped through the valleys that sat along the path, and continued past the forks and splits, and past the tavern that Dunmal had stopped in before. With a quick pace, they made a significant portion of their journey before night began to settle in. "We should set up camp here for now. I do not think attempting to infiltrate a demon-infested castle in the dark of night would be the wisest idea," Dunmal suggested, which was received with approval all around. The group moved off the main path and went to work digging a small fire pit and gathering branches and bush from a thicket not far from the road. Shandra pulled a large sheet from one of her bags and lashed it to the trees as a canopy. A dark material, brown in color, thickly woven. It became rigid after she made a gesture and whispered a soft incantation. Night settled over the woods as they discussed their tactics further, each recalling any particular skills that might be useful in their situation. Shandra was well versed in the arcane ways, with a special interest in the manipulation of the dormant elemental energies that lay hidden in the world around them. She was capable of keeping their foes at bay with her various spells, and could provide them with some minor protection as well. Barlo had chosen his path early. His training had been fast-paced, and he was well on his way to becoming one of the acolytes of Heron Soul. His control over the power of the light would be vital in their success, as he could heal their injuries with his prayers, and guard against some of the nastier effects of the demon's dark ways. The power of the light was very strong against the demons, their anathema. Ransa gave them a demonstration of the techniques he had learned with his blades, incorporating each of them into a series of strikes that would leave anyone bloodied and most likely dead. Dunmal needed only swing his blade, which stood as tall as him and nearly as wide, to display the strengths he held beneath his freshly painted armor. They would provide the primary damage and killing blows, while Shandra maintained control over any crowds that may assault them, and Barlo invoked his power to rid the castle of the demon's foulness. Each slept well in preparation for the tasks that lay ahead. In the morning, they gathered their equipment and started down the road once more. Before long, they ran into the dilapidated wall and followed it to the sundered gates. The Donkey King had gone back to grazing along the edges of his lands and did not see them approach. Dunmal hailed the beast, and it responded with an ear-piercing cry as it galloped the short distance to the group of adventurers. A moment passed as the beast eyed them over, and then nodded in approval. "These are the brave souls you've gathered to accompany you in your quest to vanquish the foul demon that has assumed control of my castle. I do hope your forces combined are enough to slay the creature and his minions. I should warn you that you are not the first group of heroes whose aid I have enlisted, and, as you have likely inferred, none of the others have been successful. His nose drooped toward the ground as he shook his head. This speech must have been well rehearsed, as he did not honk or snort at any point through the entirety of it. "We will vanquish whatever evils may lie ahead, and return you to your rightful place on the throne," Dunmal exclaimed while the rest of the group stared at the beast, mouths agape. Ransa chuckled and nudged Barlo with his elbow, but Barlo was too busy staring at the donkey to respond. Shandra moved toward the donkey. Her eyes narrowed, and she jumped back, letting loose a string of words that none of them understood. "I can see traces of the foul magics used against you, your highness. It was a powerful wizard indeed who brought this upon you, and if he could not contain the beast, this will be a difficult task, no doubt," she explained. Everyone's attention shifted directly to her, the same question lurking in the back of all of their minds.
"Do you think we're gonna make it out of there?"
Ransa asked, his accent a thick web that bound his words into fast-paced bundles. The others watched Chandra's expression in anticipation. "Possibly. The wizard's folly was in attempting to control the beast. We must simply destroy it." Her words did not bring much comfort to the others. "By combining our efforts, we should be able to slay the demon. I would like to peer into this wizard's room in the tower if possible. There may be some valuable information to one knowledgeable in the arcane ways." After a brief discussion of the risks involved and their according payment, they went over their plans once more. Barlo was responsible for keeping them alive with the power of the light to seal their wounds like a bandage of mystic energy. Dunmal would hold the beasts at bay while Ransa tore them asunder with his blades. Shandra would add the effects of her magic on top of their attacks and cast any defensive spells she could, should the need arise. Though they were all still in the early stages of their training, together they could prove to be a formidable team with tact and caution. The Donkey King wished them luck, and they made their way up the path through the field. A gust of wind blew from the south and nipped at their backsides. Chandra's scarves billowed toward the castle that sat dauntingly behind a small interior wall. They passed a pair of broken-down buildings, perhaps living quarters for the field's attendees. Something stirred inside, but did not let itself be seen. Two small towers sat above an arched entryway in the wall ahead of them. Moans and howls came from the castle as wind swept through the cracks and holes, though some of the sounds were organic in origin. Small clusters of winged creatures flapped about the tower that peeked up from behind the castle. None of the creatures descended upon them as they approached. The donkey's notes on the demon's behavior appeared to be true, and the smaller minions steered clear of the group. Once they passed through the arch, a large form appeared from the top of the spire and back, and circled the castle as it made its way down to greet them. Their weapons were drawn immediately as they watched it follow its spiraling path downward. It swooped down in a final dive toward the squad, but pulled up before it reached the ground. Fragments of rock spilled down as the creature sunk its claws into the wall that formed a bridge between the two smaller towers. Its wings spread wide.
"Ah, fresh blood! My minions will be pleased to pick the flesh from your bones."
Its chest heaved, and its rows of spikes bobbed as it let out a terrifying guttural laugh. Wings flapped and pushed a strong gust of air toward them. The demon departed and made its way back to the top of the large tower in the back. Shandra had started an incantation. A ring of lightning spiraled around Dunmal, followed by another surrounding Barlo as well. Ransa chose two of his weapons, a short, wide dagger for his main hand, and a curved saber to parry and slash with, and applied a liquid mixture of ground herbs to them. Barlo uttered a short prayer, and each of them began to shimmer with an ethereal radiance, a blessing of protection from his chosen deity Hair and Soul. Dunmal fitted his shield onto his arm, and slammed down the visor on his helmet before he wrapped his hands to get a better grip on his large sword. They were ready to face anything that may lurk within the walls of the infested keep. As though the structure itself was aware of their completed preparation, a heavy, solid-looking gate slammed closed behind them. Thank you for joining me in Chapter 3. Hope you enjoy.